Hey, what's up everyone? It's Gambit, and today I just wanted to do a quick little video going over all the settings in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I'm really enjoying this game. I hope you guys are too. They've got a lot of good settings. You guys might not realize just how much there is to all this stuff. I really like it. I might do a more in-depth graphics guide in the future, but we'll go over everything just real fast. I'm not going to delay too long. Let's just jump right into it. For keyboard and mouse settings, a lot of this stuff is just going to be personal preference. I'm not going to hang around on every single setting for too long. Let me just say this, as far as like mouse sensitivity goes, there's a kind of a balance between mouse sensitivity and your particular mouse's DPI settings. Here's what I think is relevant. How big is your mouse mat? Mine is about 20 inches, and for me, if I swipe my mouse from one side to the other, that takes me in a 360 degree turn. So 20 inches equals 360. But I know people who do great with 6 inches as a 360, and I know some people who 20 inches only gives them about a 90 degree turn. So this is all personal preference. My DPI is 400, my mouse sensitivity is 12. I don't do anything special with the advanced settings there. Just do what works for you. If you guys want like a aim guide or something, there's tons of them on the internet, but if you guys want me to do one, just let me know in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to do that for you guys. Aim down sight, mouse sensitivity, I just have set to relative. Invert mouse look disabled. I don't know what wacko is enabling that, but they seem to have it in every game, so someone out there is doing it. The rest of this stuff, this is basically going to screw up your accuracy, so just turn it all off. I don't even want to go through it because it's just going to fuck up your aim, so just turn it off. Movement, all of the keybinds, it's really up to you. I will say that if you have tactical sprint behavior set to hold and you have crouch set to left control, I have found that it's very hard to do the slide maneuver if you take your finger off of shift in doing your sprint and hit left control to slide. So I've had to actually kind of use C as my slide button, even though I usually use control for crouching. I know lots of people use C for crouching also, so that might not even apply to you. I don't use any of the advanced settings here. As far as this stuff, I like tapping for sliding. If you have it set to hold, I notice there's a little micro delay in when you start to slide. Tapping is just, it's more responsive, but it's not awful if you set it to hold. Crouch and prone, I have these to toggle, so that way I don't have to hold a button down. I like all of my fingers to be as mobile as they can be, just in case I need to hit another button in a hurry, you know what I mean? So I like those things set to toggle. Automatic airborne mantle, basically when you vault over stuff, do you want the game to do it for you automatically just because you hit the jump key, or do you want more control over it? If you want more control over it, disable this. If it's enabled, simply hitting the jump button while you're already pushed into something is going to cause you to vault over it. To me, that's just a good way to accidentally drop out of your cover and get shot. So I have that disabled, so that way I have to either double tap, jump, or hold the jump key while pushing into something, and it just gives you more control. Sprint, toggle or hold, I kind of like both. I'm kind of experimenting with toggle. I normally like hold for sprint, but I have noticed that because of the tactical sprint, which requires you, unless you set it to something in the advanced settings, you have to double tap it. I've noticed that if I do hold, sometimes double tapping the sprint key causes me to do this weird stutter step. So I'm kind of testing out toggles, seeing how that works. It has its pros and cons. Now it's like there's a little bit of a stutter when you want to stop sprinting. But the other cool thing is, while you're if you have it set to toggle and you're sprinting, all you have to do is just hit the sprint key again, and then you'll jump into your attack sprint. But it does mean that if your tactical sprint isn't on cooldown, you have to let go of the W key to stop sprinting, which can kind of trip you up a little bit. So it's kind of a double-edged sword either way. Do what feels right for you. Weapons and equipment, again, like the keybinds are pretty much whatever makes sense for you. Weapon mount, that is when you lean into a wall. If you hit the Q key or whatever binding you have it set to, lets you do that. It's kind of, they don't have a lean key, so this is basically your lean ability. I really like it. I don't use it a ton, but it does come in handy. I have it set to Q, but I've also had it set to my one of my thumb buttons too. Aside from that, I like having the melee button on my thumb. I like having the tactical, you know, your stun grenades and stuff also on my thumb button. And then grenade, I use my middle mouse button more than G. Basically, if it comes to attacking, I like it all to be on my mouse personally. This stuff, I have this enabled because if it's disabled, when you run out of ammo, you then have to realize you're out of ammo and then manually switch to a different gun. But if you're out of ammo, you probably just want to switch to your next gun as soon as possible. So if this is enabled, it will do it for you automatically. So I leave it enabled. Switch weapon minimum delay. You want this set to 0. You want that set to 0 too. If you have it set to anything other than 0, there's going to be a slight delay in how fast you're able to switch back to your first weapon. So if you made a mistake and you need to switch back, there's going to be a delay unless this is set to 0. For this is when you're trying to move off of cover without hitting the Q key or whatever you have your mount button set to. If you have it set to 0, then as soon as you hit, I'm going to hit the D key right now, you immediately just move away from it. You have a delay. I'll just show you real quick. I'm hitting the D key now. You see that? That's a huge, I mean, that's a pretty big delay. I mean, I just maxed it out. But even at 1, you know, hitting it now, there's still just a little bit of a delay there. I don't like it. This gives you maximum control over that. You don't want any delay when for as fast as this time to kill is in this game. You don't want any delay in there at all. For weapon mount activation, it gives you a ton of options. I like toggle personally. This is for mounting. This is what we've been talking about. But it does require you to have a whole key set up for it. But I like that more than double tapping ADS. If you have that set, just keep in mind the first time you hit the ADS button, you're tapping it. The second time, you have to hold it if you have the game set up to hold the ADS. It's kind of awkward, but if you don't do that, you won't mount it at all. ADS plus melee is kind of interesting. I kind of like that because now you don't have like a whole separate button for it. You're just using buttons that already exist for it. But you know, on the off chance someone jumps up to you from around a corner and you're standing against that corner and you were ADSing, I'd rather melee them than accidentally mount the wall. You know what I mean? That seems like a good way to get killed. So I just like having a separate key there. Don't set it to ADS. That is bad. That could work too. ADS plus use. You probably wouldn't mess up with that. So I would say one of these 3 keys. If you do ADS, you're just going to auto mount every time you ADS. You don't want that. Like, that might seem like a good idea, but you want it to be intentional when you mount those walls, okay? Weapon mount movement exit. If you disable this, you won't be able to, you'll have to hit the Q key or whatever the mount button is to exit your wall mount or cover mount or whatever you want to call it. Aim down sight behavior, I like hold. Equipment behavior, I like hold. Kill streaks, there's nothing really here that matters. Same for this, hold. All right, moving on. Input device, if you're not using mouse and keyboard on the PC, you're just crazy to me. Field of view, this is personal preference. If you go to 120, you're gonna be able to see a lot more on the side, but the game is gonna get really fish-eyed. Like, if you look at that, see how square that is? But we start looking to the left there, and now look how rectangular that looks. It starts getting really stretched out. It does not look good to me. When you ADS, all that goes away, by the way. I personally am used to 103. That's what I used in PUBG. And when you know, that looks square, you look away. It's a little more rectangular, but it's not nearly as stretched out as it used to be. The other side effect of using a very high field of view is, look how far away that doorway is to me now, right? It looks very, very far away. Meanwhile, if you drop it all the way down to 60, look how close it is now, right? It's going to make it much easier to spot people when you the lower the field of view is. So you just want to find the right balance for you. Brightness, just personal preference. Horizontal and vertical heads-up display. Basically, if you drop it all the way down, your heads-up display is going to get crushed in towards the center of your screen. Some of you might like that. It means your eyes don't have to look quite as far to like see stuff, but personally, there's just a bigger chance that stuff's going to obscure something that I need to see. So I like having them as far out as possible, but you know, whatever works for you. Skip introduction movie. If you want the game to load faster and you don't want to go through the same splash screen every time you start the game up, enable that. It will skip the movie. Tooltips, I have that enabled. I'll probably disable that at some point though. Subtitles, you know, whatever. I have it disabled. If you're colorblind, go ahead and mess with that. Text chat, I don't like cancer, so I disable that. Dismemberment, I have that enabled because, you know, gore is good for me. For all of this stuff, basically, I have frames enabled, and everything else I don't. I don't really care about this stuff. Server latency I do care about, but all you have to do is just tab, and if you look in the far right, you'll see the latencies listed for not just you, but everyone in the game. So I don't need to have that permanently fixed to the screen. That's it for that. Graphics, just set your refresh rate to the maximum. Render resolution, set it to 100. If you go below that, you'll get a lot more frames, but the game's gonna look like a blurry mess. If you go way above that, it's gonna absolutely kill your frame rate without really giving you that much in the way of benefit. I mean, here, we'll just look at it real quick. That's what it looks like at 100, which is what I think you should keep it as. If you go all the way to the max, now look at it. The leaves look a little bit better, and the bars there look a little bit better. But we're also getting 66 frames per second now, whereas if we drop back to 100, now we're getting 100 more frames per second. That seems worth it to me. Now, if we drop it to 66, which is the minimum, it looks like a blurry mess, but we do get like an extra like 60 or 80 frames. You know, if you're one of those crazy CSGO players, maybe you can make an argument for this, but to me, this just looks like garbage. 100 is that perfect blend for me, so that's what I keep it at. Aspect ratio, just your default is what I would do. VSync disabled. Custom frame rate limit, I just turn everything up to the max. You know, do whatever feels right for you. Highlights, you might want this. This is personal preference. I suspect this probably costs you some frames. I have a whole streaming PC that I record off of, so that's what I use, so I just keep that disabled. Color space, I just have on default. As far as all of this stuff goes, filmic strength, film grain, motion blur, depth of field, disable all that crap, okay? As far as your actual graphic settings here, I have found that the difference between everything on high and everything on low is actually quite significant. We're getting 167 frames per second right now. Now, if we disable all this stuff, 167 up to 240, that's pretty good. The game still looks pretty decent, all things considered. It definitely looks worse. I'm not saying it doesn't look worse. You mostly notice it with like the anti-aliasing. You can see it there. You can really see it there. You can see it in the leaves. And you can see the shadows look a lot blockier, right? If you turn it all up to maximum, I can't use ray tracing because I don't have the correct graphics card for that. Turn it all up, you drop significant frames. But look, I have a 1080 and an i7 7700. It's not the super top of the line PC that it used to be, and I'm still getting 160 frames per second. Pretty good for having everything maxed out here. But look how good the shadows look now. The anti-aliasing looks a lot better. And so, you know, if you want to max out frame rate, just disable everything. If you're trying to get like that perfect blend, I have found that tessellation gives you about 2 to 3 frames. None of these really have a huge impact in my opinion. Maybe particle does when grenades go off and stuff. Shadows have about 10 frames. Ambient occlusion has about 10 frames. And anti-aliasing gives you about 20 frames. And that's the difference between having it maxed and turned off. So those are the 3 settings you'll probably, well, 3 or 4 settings, I guess, that you'll probably get the most impact out of. But yeah, the game's very well optimized. So even on my, you know, middling PC, I'm still getting over 144 frames per second, which is the max that my PC is capable of anyway. So to me, that's pretty good. Audio, it's a very loud game, so I have my master volume turned down to 60, and even that is pretty darn loud for me. Voice chat, I have turned off. If you want to be a good teammate, maybe you turn it on, but honestly, all I hear is like racial slurs and how like bad everybody is, and I don't need any of that toxicity in my life. So I have that disabled. I just, you know, I invite my friends to games and I talk to them. Audio mix, I have set to boost high. That makes things pretty loud. My suggestion is you go in here, you hit play. It's gonna play a bunch of sound effects for you, and just cycle through these. Whatever one you highlight is gonna be the one it goes for. Find out what works best for you. Experiment if you don't like the one you selected, and go from there. Controller, I'm not going to go through because we're PC players here. Account, if you're a streamer, disable this stuff, and no matter who you are, keep all that stuff displayed. I hope this guide helped you guys out. I'll do some more in-depth guides, especially on graphics. There's a lot we could go through a lot of this stuff and talk about like what's the best settings to see people in dark places, or if they're hiding behind a bush or whatever. So I'll do a more in-depth guide on that stuff in the future. This video is already long. I just want to get through this as quickly as possible. I hope this video helped you guys out. If it did, could you please leave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I plan to do a lot more Call of Duty content in the future. Also, I do stream on Twitch all the time. Consider dropping me a follow there. You can get my links to that as well as my Discord channel and all my social media down below. See you guys next time.